No, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us today. As you can see, this is the Florida Sheriff's Association, and many of our esteemed colleagues are with us today. So I welcome all of my sheriffs with us. We serve together to keep Florida safe, and I'm going to turn it over now to our president, Sheriff Prummell. Sheriff?
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, everybody. First, I want to start off by thanking Governor DeSantis, Senate President Ben Albritton, and Speaker of the House Danny Perez. Since these immigration discussions have started with the special session, they brought us right in and gave us a seat at the table to discuss all this. And now we have the laws that are passed. A lot of you have heard 287G. Well, 287G falls under Title 8 of the U.S. Immigration Code. And it outlines several different programs in which local law enforcement can use to assist ICE and HSI. One of those programs is what's called the Warrant Service Officer Program. This allows us to train our deputies within the jails. They get special certifications, and they can serve warrant detainers that ICE issues out to those criminal illegals that come into our jails. And I am very proud to report, through the hard work of the sheriffs and the staff at the Florida Sheriff's Association, all 57 sheriff-run jails and 10 county-run jails have their WSO MOAs signed. And we are now working on, within the next couple of weeks, we're very hopeful that we will have the training here in Florida and that all of the jails will be up and running. So what that does is, like I stated, it allows them, when somebody is arrested and booked into our jail, if they have a detainer on them, ICE is notified. When that person is ready to leave the jail, our staff can serve that warrant on them and hold them for an extra 48 hours, and then ICE comes and takes them into custody. So now our next step is, you have heard the governor talking about what he's doing with the state law enforcement officers. Another program under the 287G is the Street Task Force program. That allows law enforcement, state and local law enforcement, to augment some of the powers of ICE out there on the street. As we're doing our normal duties and we come across illegals that have detainers, we're able to do those investigations and turn them over to ICE. We've been working diligently with the sheriffs so everybody's MOA can get signed, and we are working on the future training for that as well. So with the governor's lead, we're following behind, and your sheriffs are ready to go. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our legislative chair, Sheriff Bob Galtieri.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Galtieri. I'm the sheriff in Pinellas County and chair of the FSA Legislative Committee. So illegal immigration is a problem. It's not only a federal problem, it's a problem for all of us. It's a problem for every village, every town, every city, every county, and every state in America. It's a problem for a number of reasons, but at the forefront is the problem of criminal illegals. Those in our country who wreak havoc in our communities, those who victimize our citizens by peddling their dope, stealing, molesting kids, and killing people. This is wrong. It's not okay. And there are some people out there, and we understand this, who espouse empathy for some people in our country illegally because of decades of failed federal immigration policies. Those are people who have been here for years, albeit illegally, who have assimilated into our communities, work in some cases, and in some cases even pay taxes, and those people commit no crimes. And there is room for discussion about that. But there is no room for discussion about those who are in this country illegally, who are victimizing our citizens, who are committing crimes, who are disobeying our laws. There's no room for discussion about that, and these people need to go, and they need to go today. There's also no room for discussion about the people who come here illegally, go through the immigration process. A judge orders them deported. They are deported, and then they come back again illegally, like the illegal who twice came back, who killed one of our deputies in September of 2022. That guy, as I said, was twice previously deported back to Honduras. He came back a third time illegally through Eagle Pass, Texas, and he killed Pinellas County Sheriff's Deputy Michael Hartwick. There's also no room for discussion about the 1.4 million people in our country today with active final deportation orders issued by a judge who also issued a warrant for their removal, and these people simply flick their finger at the court and they haven't left. What I say to that is just no. This is not okay. From everything we have heard, seen, and been a part of with the federal government, their priority is apprehending and deporting as quickly as possible those who are criminal illegals, public safety threats, national security threats, those who have been previously deported and come back again, like Deputy Hartwick's killer, and those who are ignoring a judge's order to leave after they had their day in court. There's a number of ways that sheriffs and other local law enforcement agencies can help ICE, and we should help ICE, because ICE does not have the resources to do it alone, and it's our constituents, the people who elected us, to keep them safe, who are being victimized by these criminal illegals. Now, sheriffs work closely with ICE now, and according to ICE, the most pressing need they have is for us to deliver to them people who are booked into our jails, who are clearly illegals and have clearly committed crimes, so that these people are deported and not released back into the community to yet commit more crime. We do that, as Sheriff Prummell mentioned, by honoring the immigration detainer requests and the accompanying warrant. Now, I have an example of those up here to the board to the left, and one of them is the detainer itself, which is the request, and the warrant is what gives us the authority, the legal authority, to hold these people. And we're working with ICE to honor these immigration detainer requests, and we have going back to 2017. But back in 2017, we ran into a problem, and there was a legal problem. But we worked with then ICE Director Tom Homan, and we came up with a legal solution where our deputies in the jails across Florida would be deputized under 287G to serve these ICE arrest warrants that go with the detainers. We're able to implement this in some of Florida's county jails before President Trump left office the first time, but not in all counties. And when the Biden administration came in, they gutted the program. They stopped the deputizations. During the first Trump administration, I'll give you an example just for the Pinellas County Jail, we were averaging about 400 detainers a year. In the first year of the Biden administration, we got 14. We currently have about 150 people in the Pinellas County Jail. And remember, there are 66 other jails in Florida of people who are charged with crimes, who are in the country illegally, and for whom we have received ICE detainers. Now, 6 of these people, and I'm going to go through these people that we have up here on the boards. The first one is they're currently in the Pinellas County Jail, been charged with state crimes, here illegally. The first one is Gennaro Pena. He's illegally here from Mexico. We arrested him in Pinellas County on a charge of burglary to an occupied structure. Now, think about this. He's here illegally from Mexico. He's breaking into people's homes. And here in Florida, okay, his criminal history is aggravated battery, trespassing, resisting a law enforcement officer, 2 additional previous burglary charges, brawling, possession of crack cocaine, petty theft, and criminal mischief. The next one is Samuel Pedraza Garcia. He's also here illegally from Mexico, and we arrested him on 20 counts of viewing and possessing child pornography. The next one is Moises Israel Sanchez Hernandez. He's illegally here from El Salvador. We arrested him on a charge of lewd and lascivious molestation of a child under 12 years old. This child molester has a Florida criminal arrest record for domestic violence, possession of cocaine, forgery, hit and run with injuries, attempted purchase of cocaine, and a probation violation. The next one is Jamie Moran, illegally here from Mexico. He was arrested in our county for lewd and lascivious molestation and sexual battery of a child under 12 years old. To put this one in simple terms, this illegal alien from Mexico raped a kid under 12 years old. That's not okay. His arrest record, on top of this, raping a kid under 12, is for larceny, theft, domestic battery, soliciting for prostitution, and domestic battery. The next one, Eduardo Lopez Rojas, who is illegally here from Cuba, and he was drunk and killed someone in our county. He's charged with DUI manslaughter, DUIs causing serious bodily injury, and resisting arrest. And last but not least, we have Aner Javier Maldonado from Honduras. This illegal alien raped a physically helpless person and committed numerous acts of lewd and lascivious molestation on a child. The formal charges are sexual battery of a physically helpless person and multiple counts of lewd and lascivious molestation on a child between 12 and 16 years old. His criminal history includes possession and purchase of cocaine, robbery, aggravated battery causing bodily harm, re-entry of a deported alien and being found in the U.S. after but not being denied. So he's one of those guys that was previously through the system, got booted, and now he comes back here and is raping somebody between 12 and 16 years old. And some people say that illegal immigration is not a problem. Really? Okay, look at these. So for 4 years under the Biden administration, no Florida County Jail personnel were trained or deputized by ICE, and huge numbers of criminal illegals, like these killers and child rapists, were released back into our communities. When President Trump took office a month ago and ICE ramped up the detainer process, 26 of Florida's 67 county jails were unable to honor the immigration detainers that would keep people like this in custody because there was no 287G personnel trained and deputized who could make these immigration arrests because Biden gutted it. On day one of the Trump administration, just over 30 days ago, we immediately began moving forward to get 287G agreements signed with all remaining 26 county jails that, again, had been stymied under the Biden administration, including some big ones: Miami-Dade, Orange, Hillsborough. We've been working hard on this over the last couple of weeks. And as was said, today we announced that we have signed agreements in all 67 county jails in Florida. Now, I want to thank Senate President Ben Albritton, House Speaker Danny Perez, and Governor Ron DeSantis for their full court press on immigration, and the immigration bills that they recently made law in Florida are good policy and good for public safety in Florida. The governor, the Senate President, the Speaker are out front on this very important issue, and Florida is leading the nation. While the governor, speaker, and president have set the course, I also want to recognize and thank the staff behind the scenes in the Senate President's office, the Speaker's office, and the governor's office, especially their respective chiefs of staff and lawyers who worked tirelessly over the last few weeks to ensure Florida has the best possible legislation at the moment. Many thanks to those people behind the scenes who really got the job done. Now, one important requirement in the new state law is that all 67 counties must have 287G personnel and honor the immigration detainers. Implementing the process under which all jails will be able to hold these criminal illegals is well underway, and we hope to have it fully operational within the next 15 to 30 days. This is a big deal because it means criminals like these, people who kill people, people who steal, people who break into people's houses, people who rape kids, will be deported directly from jail and not released back to the street where ICE, or us helping ICE, have to go and track them down. It just makes sense from the jail out of here as opposed to the jail back to the street. This is another big change from the Biden era when these criminal illegals, because back then in the Biden era, during the Biden administration, when they were arrested, we couldn't turn them back over to ICE or turn them over to ICE because under the Biden administration, he required that they be convicted before they could be deported. That's ridiculous. So people like these would bond out of jail, stay in Florida because they had to be convicted, then do their time, then they would be deported. No more. Now it's jail to deportation. These 287G straight task forces that Sheriff Prummell mentioned, they're very important, and we're glad to participate. But according to ICE, plugging the hole in these jails that are not now honoring these detainers is the priority because it keeps clearly bad people from getting back on the street where then ICE has to go expend resources and we have to help them go find these people. It's also safer for the ICE officers to take these people into custody from the jail. The street task forces have not existed in 12 years because they were killed under the Obama administration. December 31st of 2012 is the last time there were street task forces in the United States. And 12 years of local law enforcement not being able to help ICE make these arrests has had an impact, and not a good one. People ask why so many Americans have died over that time from fentanyl overdoses. Here in Florida, in 2022, there were 6,230 people who died from fentanyl overdoses. Where's the fentanyl coming from? Across the border, peddled by these people. It is because that's what happens when there's a porous border, illegal alien drug traffickers run amok, and a strapped immigration agency can't get help from local law enforcement to deport these people peddling their poison. Another problem is ICE bed space. Sheriffs, all of us, are looking hard to
Thank you, Sheriff. When you look up here today, you see the best law enforcement leaders in the state of Florida. When you see this that says 67, you go, oh, that's good. That's no small task. It's the Florida Sheriff's Association leading the way for the state of Florida. But we're also leading the way for the United States. We're creating the example for other states, other sheriffs associations to follow. The reality of it is we have made it abundantly clear and are working with the federal government every day. The number one, and I want to highlight what Sheriff Gualtieri ended with, is capacity. We can overwhelm their current ability to house people in days. As you've heard me say for the last 2 or 3 weeks, that in addition to that, there's about 1.4 million deportation warrants that's in ICE's custody, but our law enforcement officers across the state have no idea who they are. And the reason we have no idea who they are is because they don't put them in the NCIC system. Well, voila. This last Friday, they've put 700,000 of the 1.4 million that we're aware of in our NCIC system. Okay, so I want to frame this for a second. So now we've got 700,000 warrants of deportation. The big challenge, and we're working with ICE, but the president needs to get that big black pen out and get to signing EOs. We've got to have capacity, and it's got to come from the federal government. There's a lot of nuances and small rules that ICE has already broken down for us, but there's still a lot more to do. We are working around the clock in order to work the details out so we can ultimately help the president with his mission that, quite frankly, that was provided by the people of the United States who said, we want these illegal aliens who commit crime out of this country, and we want them out now. I applaud Governor DeSantis. In fact, you've seen this before, and you're going to see them right now. We showed you a while back some Ron DeSantis border crossing, and here's what's happened. This is all it took under the Biden administration to get across the border, is to just walk across the border. Or you could run across the border. Or you could skip across the border. Well, now they need to turn around and go the other way. If they self-deport, then they won't end up in a jail and a lockup through the system. But it's time to go the other way. And that's important. As we've said before, this is all about what we want you to do and to understand it's southbound and down. It's time to leave the country. You can leave by yourself or you can leave in handcuffs. But we're tired of people such as Sheriff Gualtieri's pointed out here that are in this country illegally raping, robbing, murdering, pillaging, and stealing and have multiple arrests. How did they get to the second arrest? Why weren't they deported after the first one? Because the federal government thinks more of the illegal alien in this country that's victimizing the good people than they thought of the good people. President Trump says it's a new day. Governor DeSantis says it's a new day. Governor DeSantis and our president, Ben Albritton, and our speaker, Danny Perez, says we're going to not only lead the state in keeping the people of the state of Florida safe, but we're going to lead the nation and show them how. With that, any of the sheriffs will take questions from y'all.
I have a quick question for Sheriff Gualtieri.
Yep.
So you mentioned moving on things, and I wanted to know your thoughts on him pleading guilty, and
Right.
also what do you feel like needs to be done in a workplace so that situation doesn't happen again?
Well, I'm glad he pled guilty, and he's going to be sentenced upcoming. I'm sure the judge will do the right thing, and he's going to get many, many years in prison, and then be deported again, and hopefully that we see a sea change in this country, and he won't come back for a fourth time and kill a cop again. So as far as the company is concerned, I did a press conference right after Mike Hartwick was killed, and it was obvious that they were not doing what they needed to do as far as their diligence in making sure that they were hiring people who were illegal. Because I can tell you, I put eyes on some of those documents on a personnel file staying on the side of 275 when we were hunting this guy down, and they were just fake IDs is what they were. And, he was able to clear E-Verify because he had fake information and fake IDs. But I believe there's still some investigation ongoing into that. But everybody needs to step up, do the right thing, and make sure that they're dotting their I's and they're crossing their T's as they're hiring these people, because when they don't, it ends up in tragedy, and we had a deputy killed because of it.
I had a question on, just to clarify how the system works now.
Hmm?
You mentioned that you're not waiting for a conviction anymore. So
Right.
what happens in these serious crimes? Is it,
Yeah.
are they held and facing justice?
So what happens is that people get booked into the jails. We get notified by ICE that this person has been confirmed as somebody who is here illegally, and then they send us the detainer and the warrant. And then that person, it goes through the state system on their state charges as long as they don't get out of jail. If they don't bond out or somehow get released prior to their case being disposed of. What's happening under Biden is ridiculous, is people could get out of jail and bond out and then go out back into the community and wreak havoc because they weren't convicted. Well, if they sit in jail, then the feds, ICE, are going to let them bring their state case to conclusion. And then after the state case is to conclusion, then they'll deport them. But the good news is the days of catch and release, where you could go to jail, be illegal, be charged with some very serious crime, and get out because you weren't convicted, thankfully those are over with, because you had people that were getting out because of that policy. And that's just messed up.
And then just to ask, you mentioned those borderline cases that are worth the conversation. So I did want to ask you about those. Has there been any concern about people falsely reporting crimes to get somebody put in jail or into the system? And what happens if a person is found not convicted or their charges are dropped? Does that change anything?
Well, you got a lot there, So I don't know what you're talking about as far as borderline cases are concerned. You get somebody that's, and again, the criteria that they use is somebody is a criminal illegal, somebody is a public safety threat, they're a national security threat. I'll call them a double dipper. They've been removed previously, now come back. Or a judge has already had a hearing, given them their day in court, they've had their trial, and they got a warrant that says get out, but they don't get out. That's what they're focusing on. And, like Sheriff Judd talked about is, and we mentioned that there's only 2,000 beds in Florida. They only got probably, 40,000 beds across the country. And so that's going to fill up, that whole category is going to fill up all those beds. And that is certainly the priority. And I haven't heard, and nobody who's being fair and objective about it has said that ICE has said, the federal government has said anything other than that's their priority. So, yeah, there's people here that have been here for a very long time that are going about their business, and that's a different discussion for a different day. That's not what we're talking about here.
Is the goal to open more facilities, perhaps, to have more beds, or what would your ideal goal be if you had that, federal support?
Well, I think that the goal for us would be is to support ICE and to support the federal government with this as much as we possibly can and to the hilt. So we're going to be doing a bed inventory and looking at seeing what the county jails have. And if we have room, if we can enter into an agreement, we can house these people for them. And some of it is a temporary housing thing for only a couple of days, but some of it's more long term. And where the real need is more long term beds. Because as I mentioned, when this comes online and we get all 67 jails that are honoring those detainers, and some big ones that aren't doing it now because they can't, like Miami-Dade and Orange and Hillsborough, they're big is that they're going to get flooded. So we need to do all we can to help them with the beds, but they also, as Sheriff Judd said, they need to help themselves too, and they got to figure this out. And it's tough, but that cannot stand in the way, because we can't let people like this back out on the street. They need to go. And and it does take a little bit of time, and they are rapidly removing some of these, the ones that already have what they call them warrants of deportation, and the ones that already have orders. They're getting them out in a couple days. Some of them take a little bit longer, so it's a process. But we're going to do everything we can. I can assure you, the sheriffs of Florida have talked about this extensively, and there isn't a sheriff in the state that isn't committed to making sure that people like this don't get out on the street and wreak havoc in the communities, and that we meet the expectation of our constituents, our citizens, and as we keep them safe.
And make no mistake about it, there's not capacity in the Florida sheriffs or the county jails of this state to make any negligible difference. We've got to have the federal government create capacity. I think last week I had 30 beds. The sheriff, I think he's got them sleeping on the floor. Yeah. Some sheriffs have a few beds, but we don't have capacity. So don't let us leave the illusion with you that we can handle all of these people, because we will overwhelm this system very rapidly. And we intend to work very aggressively, but that's why we're here making this statement today. And the federal government knows this. They have to create capacity. We can bring them all the business they can handle and more.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in Pinellas County Jail, we have 3,000 inmates in the jail, and that's 200 on the floor. There's no room at the inn. Now, we'll do what we can and hold these people on the detainers, but we don't have any mass capacities. We're going to look and see if there's any room, but we are not the big solution to the housing problem.
On the street task force that you were talking about, one of you was talking about really having powers of ice. So you mentioned during normal duties. So sheriff's officers will not be doing anything beyond normal duties in terms of going out and trying to find people who might be illegal?
So that's yet to be determined exactly how all that's going to play out. But if we know that there are people out here like these guys, is that it's the right thing to do. And I would imagine that under the right circumstances we're going to go get these people if they're not in jail and they're out on the street. But again, there's more to come on that. I think you'll get more information on that in the near future. Right now, what we're focused on right now is plugging the hole. And the hole is having 26 of Florida's 67 county jails that are not honoring those detainers, where people like these are going out the back door after they come in the front door. And no, that's got to stop. That's got to stop today. And that's why we're pushing this hard. And that's why we worked hard to get all these agreements signed. And the Trump administration and ICE is working hard with us. We're going to get this training. And I hope within 15 to 30 days, we'll be able to say that every single county jail in Florida is making sure that people who have killed people, broke into homes, viewing child pornography, raping kids, they're not getting out.
Sheriff, I also have a question on the street task force. You said it stopped in 2012.
Yeah.
It's been 13 years. What has happened? Have you pushed for it in those 13 years to resume through the first Trump administration, Biden administration, and what has the response been when you pushed for that?
Hell no. They wouldn't give us access to anything. I mean, and it was not a good situation. It was, and go look at it. Look at the history. It was when Janet Napolitano was the DHS secretary, and she nixed it on December 31st of 2012 because there were too many complaints. They didn't like, and look at what's happened since then. And look at the fentanyl crisis. Look at the number of people who died. Look at the drug trafficking. Look at all the problems we've had. Is that ICE can't do this alone. They simply don't have the resources. And again, what we're talking about, and I'll say, speaking from me, and the sheriffs can speak for themselves, the federal government has failed in its immigration policies over the last many years. With a porous border, and there's a lot of people who are here that are not committing crimes like this. There's a ton that are. Our focus needs to be on the people that are having an adverse public safety impact, and there are so many of them that that's what our focus is.
My question's for Sheriff Prummell.
Yep.
Is there an issue of manpower in the jails? You're having more people potentially being held on the 48 hours. Is there any concern about that?
Well, we've always had staffing issues within the last several years. We are seeing the pendulum swing back the other way. My jail myself, right now, I'm full with staffing. I'm not like Sheriff Galtieri, though. I do have room at the inn. But if I do start bringing in those detainers and holding them, I will need additional staffing for those.
How do you expect to address that if you do need additional staff?
Hire them.
I have a question for a smaller sheriff. I'm looking at my Sheriff Breeden, but anybody from a smaller county. We've heard a lot from the larger counties, including Polk here. I count them as well. Just in terms of your capacity to handle the directives and the resources that you will need versus something like a Pinellas County.
We also are full on our jail staffing. We do have beds available. However, staffing would be an issue. We have the staffing to handle what we have now, but if we take on a large influx of people, staffing will be a problem. So we're in the same boat as Sheriff Prummell said. We'll have to hire.
Sheriff Gualtieri, you mentioned 150 in your jail. Is that the number of people right now who are in there with ICE detainers, or?
Yep, we have 150 people that are in there with ICE detainers. One of the things I also wanted, and I'll come back to you for a second, but I just want to follow up on that, is the other thing that's important to remember. Remember what the governor just did and the legislature just did, is they created a $250 million resource to fund some of this. So as we do need to hire, we do need to house people, we've now got the resources to support ICE on this. So that's a big deal. That's a huge thing. And so as they would say, right now with this, money isn't the issue. It's the logistics of making it happen. And people should know that. They really stepped up here and have provided good funding for it. But yeah, I've got 150 that right now that have ICE detainers.
Sheriff Judd, you held up the sign, the southbound and down, and you're encouraging what you call self-deportation. Are you sending that message to people who are here without legal status who do not have any criminal history, or just the ones who do?
The priority is, as clearly pointed out, is the criminal illegal alien that's here committing crime. That's the number one priority. The second priority is certainly those that have deportation orders. That will fill up the capacity. But if you're here illegally and you're worried, and it's easier to go home than it is to worry every day, you're welcome to leave the country on your own volition. They are not our priority. If you're here working, you have your kids in school, you're paying your taxes, you're not the priority. It's the criminals. It's the people. This is our priority. The ones that have already been through the federal system and have simply told the federal government, we're not going home. Not only did we disobey the law by entering this country illegally, we're going to disobey the law by staying here. And we arrested a lady that turned out to be a victim of human trafficking. She hooked up with a human trafficker and said, I want to go to the United States, but I don't have any money. He said, don't worry about it. I'll get you. Where do you want to go? He's Miami. I'll get you to Miami. So he walks her up to the border under the Biden administration. And he said, now walk right across the border here and get on that bus, and they'll take you to a receiving facility. And she did that with her child. She said, I arrived at the facility. They did a DNA swab on me and my daughter to make sure it was my daughter, and then took us to a processing room, filled out some paperwork, told me, and here's your form to fill out for your free food stamps, your EBT card. And here's the form to fill out so your daughter can get free insurance. And where is it you want to go? She said, Miami. Here's your voucher so you can travel to Miami for free. And then she said, so if you'll go here, you'll stay overnight, and then we'll put you on an airplane and let you go there. And oh, by the way, welcome to the United States of America. That's not our story, it's hers. So then she flies to Miami, where she's turned over to another human trafficker, because the human trafficker in Mexico is working. And she says, well, where do I work in order to pay back? He says, oh, you're going to prostitute. She says, I thought I was going to work. He said, oh, you are. And that's how we found her and how we rescued her. She thought she was going to come here and work in the fields, work in a restaurant, work in a grocery store. They put her out prostituting herself. That's what's going on. And if you think the person that human traffics this lady belongs in this country, you need a psychiatric appointment. They're victimizing a lot of the illegal aliens that are in this country. And we don't know about it because they're afraid to tell us. We want, whether you're legal or not legal, and you're being victimized, we need to know about that. But at the end of the day, look, our capacity, the federal government's capacity is going to be wore out by just dealing with the illegals here committing crime and those with deportation orders. So everyone else can take it easy. They're not the priority. They're not the focus here. But at the end of the day, how did we get here? Sheriff Gualtieri said it very eloquently. Failed federal policy. An administration in the last 4 years that allowed them to pour over by the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. Obviously, they really didn't care about them either by putting them in this country under those circumstances. But they certainly didn't care about the people in this country when we killed, in this country, 250,000, 300,000 people with fentanyl that came across the southern border. Meth comes across the southern border by the metric ton. They're sending victims of human trafficking across the border. And we have all of the sheriffs here, local law enforcement has been saying for a long time, there's a problem here. And the rules are so onerous with ICE. It's not the ICE folks that's trying to make it work. It's the administration that pushes these onerous ICE rules to where we can't help the federal government in the past. And what help we tried to give them was resisted because of the rules. The game has changed. And our governor in this state says every government agent in the state of Florida is going to cooperate to keep Florida safe, to create a national model. And that's supported by our Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. We have a mission, and these sheriffs and their teams at home know how to accomplish missions. Give us the tools, change the rules. We'll keep the federal government busy doing what they should have been doing all along.
Can you go into a little more detail on the training officers that undergo immigration?
He's the subject matter expert on that piece.
Sure. So there's 3 programs. One is the Warrant Service Officer Program, which is what we're talking about here. Very simple, very easy. It's the authority comes under what everybody calls this 287G, which is, don't worry about that. That's just a statute number, if you will. What it is it gets you to serve the warrants. It's about 4 hours worth of training, very easy, and we're going to get a whole bunch more trained here over the next 15 to 30 days. The next model is that where you have deputies or correctional officers in the jails, they can actually do probable cause arrests. And we have 4 counties in Florida where Sheriff Cook is from in Clay County, Collier County, Sheriff Waters is here from Duval, Jacksonville County, and then Sheriff Nienhuis in Hernando County, where they have sent their people to about a month worth of training back in the day, because there hasn't been training in 4 years because Biden killed it. And they went up to South Carolina. They spent about a month, and they can do more robust investigations. And then the third part is the street task forces, which, as I've said, have not existed for 12 years because that was nixed back in 2012. And that training also was very elaborate and extensive. The good news is, because it's all about getting it done and getting it done effectively, is what we received word that the training now is probably going to be able to get done within a matter of about 5 days and be able to get law enforcement officers across Florida and across the country trained in a more reasonable amount of time so they can go out and do this. So the training in the past has been pretty extensive for 2 programs, not so much for 1, but all of it now is going to get streamlined and we can get this done.
My question is, are they learning certain ways to ask questions on immigration? Like, what are they learning? So
to say that immigration is confusing and complex is probably an understatement. There's a lot to it, and they just need to know the basics. They don't have to be experts in it. And I tell you that some of the real heroes in this are the officers, the deportation officers from ICE's Office of ERO, or Enforcement Removal Operations, because they have mastered some very, very difficult laws and a very complex subject matter, and they're the experts. We don't have to be the expert. We have to know enough in order to protect people's rights, to do the right thing, know when we can act, and then turn it over to them and let them do it. So we don't have to turn local cops into immigration officers. We have to know enough to be able to be effective, to be legal, and then let them do their job.
If a person was to be pulled over for a traffic infraction and they have one of those immigration warrants, would they then be arrested and deported?
Short answer is yes. Okay. Short answer is yes. We're working on some logistics on that, but I think anybody, and here's the message. If you're part of that 1.4 million that has one of these warrants outstanding, and you're here illegally, and you went through the process and you went before a judge, and the judge gave you your day in court, you had your trial, and the judge said, I'm determined in alienage, I'm determined that you shouldn't be here, you don't qualify for anything, you've extended and overstayed your welcome here, and I'm issuing a court order, and a warrant that says you need to go. Why don't you get out? Because, so if you're one of those people, you should absolutely expect that if you come in contact with a law enforcement officer, that we're going to help you get out of here. Because that's not what you do in America. You don't thumb your nose, you don't stick your finger up at the court system and judicial system and the criminal justice system or the justice system, because most of that's civil. But
and are there any steps that are going to be taken to help prevent racial profiling in those situations?
we don't racial profile. Cops are going to do the right thing. And this is where some of the stuff, and people, go down this path. And this is one of the reasons why the noise that was made back in 2012, that there was, all this unjust stuff being done. If somebody has an allegation that one of our people, is doing something improper, bring it to us. We're going to investigate it thoroughly. And if somebody needs to be held accountable for doing something wrong, we're going to hold them accountable. It gets old hearing that, quite honestly, because 99.9% of all the cops in this country are doing the right thing. They're working hard, and we're trying to make good things happen and protect the public. If we're not perfect, then our people aren't perfect. And sometimes we get somebody that screws up. And if they do, I'll be the first one to hold them accountable for it. So, this whole thing is, they're going to be out there racial No, that's noise. Show me where it's happening. Show me what the allegation is. We'll thoroughly investigate it. And if somebody did that, they'll be held accountable for it. And I'm sure every sheriff up here feels the same way. But in the meantime, we're going to go do our job, and we're going to do it aggressively to protect the citizens.
Kind of following up on that, you were talking about the street task force details still kind of to be disclosed about exactly what they're doing. I mean, do you foresee doing traffic checks and?
All that's yet to be determined. Okay, is that again? That's not in place right now. What we want to focus on today is plugging this gaping hole with the jails, and we can come back at some point and have more discussion about the task forces and how they're operating. But I think that's best left because, again, the training hasn't begun. They haven't been formed. Now, I want to say this too: is that be clear about this. Is that from that using the term task force, we today are working with ICE. We're working with the Office of Enforcement, or ERO, Enforcement Removal Operations. We're working with HSI. We'll go out because cops help cops. So you'll see us out there today, and if ERO comes into Pinellas County today and says, hey, look, we're going to do an operation, and will you give us a couple uniformed deputies to help out? You bet we will. Okay, but they can't do the interviews. They can't make the arrests. They can't do because they haven't been deputized. So we've been working with them all along. And to that point, where's the complaints about racial profiling? There haven't been any because we're not doing that. We've been working with them. We just don't have the deputization. So when we get that, then we'll figure out exactly how that's going to work.
Sure. Well, being on the council, obviously it's still very new in the capacity issue you have right now. Are there any other feedback or insight that you've been able to give so far?
Yeah, I think Sheriff Galtieri explained everything very well right now. This is all very fluid, and like he stated, these immigration laws are very, very complex. And we're all trying to catch on and learn how this all works. And we're, there's a lot of chaos up there in D.C. still. So sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing up there. So we're trying to get a handle on what's going on up there so we can start implementing policies, procedures, and what we need to do to get the job done and keep our citizens safe here.
As we close up, there are those that raise those allegations about, is there going to be profiling? Is there going to be this? Is there going to be that? Listen, We're tired of hearing that crap. That's BS. It's total BS. It's woke left crazy talk. We do what's right and we follow the law. And if you're here illegally, we're going to boot your butt out of this country if you've committed crimes and are committing crimes. So tell everybody to take a deep breath, save that crazy talk for somebody else. And by the way, quit scaring the folks that are in this country legally and illegally but aren't committing any crimes into thinking that we're going to come run through their school or through their hospitals or through their neighborhoods. That's not it. We've got a plate full of illegal immigrants committing crime and warrants to deport those that have flaunted the system. And all this crazy talk just scares people that don't need to be scared. Just follow what the federal government tells you to do when they tell you to do it, okay? Thank you.
Let me just, because you raise an important thing. This is something that comes up all the time, and we get criticized, or ICE gets criticized for it. Is that under Biden, he said that ICE could not go to a hospital, couldn't go to a school, couldn't go to a church. And so when the Trump administration reversed that and said, you know what, these cops, these ERO officers, they can go. Show me one time, one place, other than the hype, the hyperbole, the nonsense, all the rhetoric. Show me one time, one place where they have gone to a school, a church, or a hospital to do some type of a raid. All they wanted to do was take the handcuffs off of them. So when you get a 17-year-old Venezuelan gang member who's happened to be sitting at a school, that they could do what the FBI does, what DEA does, what the sheriff's office do, what the police departments do, is we're not restricted from going to get somebody in some place where you got one of these guys. That's all that was. But what that got turned into, oh my God, they're going to go into the schools and they're going to be doing raids and taking kids out. Show me one. Where at a hospital do they do that? They haven't. And show me where at a church they've had. But if you have somebody, those places also shouldn't be safe havens for Venezuelan gang members or people like this. So if they need to go there, they should be allowed. That's all that was. But that got turned into everything that it's not. So let's just call it what it is. And the only thing they ask for is to restore their ability to do their job.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to be back in just a few minutes to talk about this homicide for those of you who are interested in it. I'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you, Sheriff. Grady, I thought you said you wanted us to leave.
It has been a while. So, quick update. What do you call it? Oh, now it's gone. Where'd it go? Hold on. Did some last month. We got the end award for the, yeah, that